The Beatles, aka the best band ever. You probably know that a Queen biopic movie just came out, and as I watched this for the first time, I wondered, could they do this with the Beatles? Could they really make a Beatles biopic movie? They are coming out with that movie yesterday, but it's not a Beatles biopic movie, so you guys are here right now to see how a Beatles biopic movie would go.
You know I need someone.
Since there is already a film that covers the Beatles before they were the Beatles, we have to start off in 1962. This would be a little after Pete was left out of the group, and this is when they released their first single, Love Me Do, after Ringo joined. Then it would go to the Beatles making the rest of the Please Please Me album and releasing it to the public. This would lead to a montage of them playing their songs live in the early 60s. The montage would end on them finishing up the Ed Sullivan performance of I Wanna Hold Your Hand. The next scene would be the Beatles shooting the Hard Day's Night movie, their first film. Then they shoot the Help movie. Then it shows some Beatles mania. But after this, Shea Stadium comes and the Beatles perform live there. Then the Beatles released an album and went on tour again. Then the Beatles played live in Japan, but after that they were kind of done because they got death threats in Japan, and they didn't like that, and they didn't like how they couldn't even hear their own voice over their fans, and their fans would wet themselves in the audience. So they stopped touring and people got sad. This will lead to them recording Revolver, an album with songs that would be better off stage but are really good songs. They started to work less with Brian Epstein and more with George Martin. At this time, the Beatles were served drinks that were filled with drugs. Around this time, the Beatles started to make songs that were different from the songs that they started off making. For instance, they used the sitar, an Indian guitar. Then the summer of 1967 hit. The second most top-selling album in the world was released. It'd be #1 if it wasn't for this guy. Not long after that, Brian Epstein committed suicide. Then the movie cuts to the Beatles filming the Magical Mystery Tour movie, and little did they know that the movie was going to be poorly reviewed, and no one would like it. Except I do. I mean, I just love the song. Recently, John had to divorce his wife, which caused Julian Lennon to be sad. So Paul wrote the song called Hey Jude, you might know it, to cheer him up. So it cuts to this performance.
Ladies and gentlemen, there you see the greatest tea room orchestra in the world. It's my pleasure to introduce now in their first live appearance for goodness knows how long in front of an audience, the Beatles.
Hey Jude, don't make it bad.
This would be a touching moment in the movie, seeing that it's a very nice song, and it's the first time they've performed live in years.
Hey Jude, don't be afraid.
After they finish that performance, they go to record the White Album.
If you want me to, I won't. Yes, you will. Flew in from Miami Beach, BUAC. Didn't get to bed last night.
The White Album was made. Yeah, this album was a mixed bag of songs, most songs being good, some songs being questionable, like Revolution No. 9, but they definitely outdid themselves on this album. After that, the Beatles recorded the Let It Be album and performed on the rooftop concert. is how I want the movie to end. Them playing on top of the rooftop concert, full concert. Just like the Bohemian Rhapsody movie, how they ended off Live Aid. The two songs in the credits that I want is In My Life and Maybe I'm Amazed.
There are places